Welcome back to the series Buy, Avoid, Wait for a Sale, or Kill It With Fire. Now, we haven't had that latter for quite some time, but there's always the hope that today is the day. Okay, so we've got 3 reviews of 3 recent games that came out on the Switch. Paleo Pines, which releases today, Wartales, which was announced in a recent direct, and then everyone kept saying, Mark, you need to play it, and yeah, you were definitely right, and Days of Doom from Atari. Okay, what games are worth buying, avoiding, or waiting for a sale? Well, let's find out. Paleo Pines I've been playing for around about, I think it's almost been a month at this point, over on Steam, and I think my biggest concern was whether or not it was going to make the jump to Switch and still be intact. On the surface of it, it does so much that's so similar to many of the other games we've seen recently. In fact, it feels like it's been Farming and Sim Life month. You can customize and create your own character. Now, there are a few different hairstyles, skin colors. It's not the most in-depth system, but it's okay. It's nice that it's in there. But the big differentiating feature of Paleo Pines, dinos. Now, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love dinosaurs, and they are a great addition to the sim life genre. The thing with Paleo Pines is they just outshine everything else in this game. The main character walks like Jar Jar Binks and looks like he's modelled out of Vaseline and clay, but all those dinosaurs have such personality and they're intrinsic to the gameplay. How it works is, unlike picking up a combine harvester or a tractor, here you'll use a dinosaur for those things. Not only are they your trusty steed, allowing you to move around the environments much more quickly, but they act as little dino machines, so they can water your crops, making it much quicker and easier, and later you'll use them to plough roads. And the way you gain new dinosaurs is very cool. You've got a small flute, and you use it to communicate with these prehistoric creatures. Yeah, I know, bear with me. You approach them and play a few notes, and try to mimic their calls. You'll feed them, trying to get the bar to balance within the green area, and then it's a case of feeding them their favourite poppins. Don't ask. It's this thing that you get from a character named Pippin, and once you've got the right poppins from Pippin, they'll begin to follow you. You can take them back to your farm and eventually tame them, put a saddle on them, and enslave them for the rest of their earthly days. It's tragic, really. The dinosaurs really do save the experience for me, as without it, I don't think Paleo Pines would have a great deal to offer most veterans of the genre. It's got all your usuals, a calendar with different dates, there's a weather system, but it also suffers from generic-itis, the lifeless stares of those characters, the slight jankiness of some of the scenes where a player may just walk through. The writing of those in the world I wouldn't say is brilliant, and on Switch you're looking at 30 FPS most of the time. In fact, performance is much better than I thought it would be, and the visuals bar some jaggy edges are fine, including depth of field. But the thing with Paleo Pines is it's not one large open world, and that's where it disappoints. To get back to your farm, you'll have to load in. To move into the town, you have to load. It pulls you out of the immersion. Now, those load times, they're not shocking, but they're also not the quickest. But its price of 22 quid places it around about the ballpark of most other Sim Life games on Switch. But then we literally had Maniko's Night Market yesterday, and that was 15. But it's nice to see a physical available here. Now, all of that said, if you're after another Sim Life game, but with a little unique twist in the dinosaur mechanics, then you'll certainly have fun here. It's a fun, if a little forgettable game. Okay, before we look at Atari's release, we have the sponsor of this video, Flexispot, who currently have their back to school sale, which is up to 40% off. That runs from the 1st of September all the way up to the 30th, and I'll pop a link to the desk you can see here, the one I use, the E8, where you can save a nice little chunk. Not only can you raise them up and down with the simple press of a button, you can also pre-program set heights, or opt for the presets of standing or sitting. They can stand up to 125 kilograms of load, and you can customize the design of the top, the type of wood, which is completely sustainably resourced, and then choose the design of the legs as well. I've got to be honest though, it's just really cool being able to push a button and have the thing go up and down, and then hold it down to lock everything so that my kids can stop touching the buttons and changing my presets. The motion is almost silent, and I believe is under 50 decibels. It'll also automatically switch off when needed, detect if anything gets in the way of its motion and stop, and as you can see there's tons of space to work with. Once again, a thanks to them for sponsoring this episode. Check out the links in the description if you're at all interested. It's been a bit of a game changer in my work life really. I'm not constantly sat down. Next up, we've got Atari's recent release, Days of Doom. Published by Atari, of course, but it was actually created by Sneakybox. And a thanks to Asdin for writing this section. Now, it has a nice combination of a few different genres. They're a Lithuanian-based studio, and it is nice to see them trying to bring a unique twist to the roguelite genre. In good apocalyptic story fashion, the The end of the world is the birth of a new one, but this is full of mutants, raiders, and even lizard people, and the only glimmer of hope here is the haven known as Sanctuary. There are a few survivors on a mission to grab all the resources they can and ride their armoured bus in the hopes of reaching safety behind the walls of this safe haven. The addition of some conspiracy folklore was a nice touch, and it made things stand out a little more and give the game a slightly unique feel.
A little darker, a little stranger than the old one.
Now the main objective here is to lead a group of survivors towards a safe haven, and as you progress you'll come across a variety of landscapes and settlements and confront various combat challenges and events. Additionally, you'll need to navigate through shops and overcome boss fights to reach that place. In a nutshell, it's divided into 3 clear sections: base, preparation, traversal and combat. If you've played Death Road to Canada, imagine that merged with Darkest Dungeon, and you'll have a good idea of the flavour that we're going for. You have to select your survivors for the next trip, and as it's a roguelite, you'll be upgrading your settlement with any of the gear and things you collected on previous runs, and then heading out on that traversal section. You'll see a map with different destinations dotted about, some of them combat scenarios, random encounters, with the old risk and reward mechanics you'd expect, and in the shops you can also hire some other people to join you. For me though, it was the battle scenarios that were the best aspect. The reason I think for that are the different classes. There are 8 different classes that you can use. Each class has a unique strength as well as a weakness, and the way that you strategically align your characters, choosing the items, as well as props dispersed throughout the environment, changes the way it plays out rather than just throwing your skills at the armies of abominations. The key here is to use the hazards within it to gain the upper hand. There are barrels that release either combustible gases or water. Now of course it doesn't stop you from going in like a headless chicken, charging the enemy and firing on all cylinders, but let me tell you, from experience, that's not going to work. It's much better to fight smart here, and that type of play is well rewarded. For instance, pyromancers can set oil barrels alight and cause a big area of effect, causing a chain effect of fire. Hydromancers can soak enemies, and then electric, well, you kind of know what's going to happen. Difficulty wise, it's no pushover, and I did find that there were certain rules that you had to almost learn to be most effective. The bosses right at the edges of the maps are extremely formidable and could potentially annihilate your entire party. You'll be able to look at the queue at the top of your screen to decide exactly the smartest move based on what's coming next. You're looking at a mixture of skills and standard attacks, and again, those classes each have their own unique ones, so learning them will make a big difference to your outcomes. Hopefully, most of your team survive, and those that do will level up. This includes stat increases, passive buffs through relics, and a little element of tinkering to get those skills just how you want them. While I think there's a good selection of characters, I do think there's potential here to increase the roster in the future. Also, in terms of accessibility features, there's more they could do here to tweak difficulty and the overall experience, but my main one really is the controller mapping. Things like resizing fonts, I'd love to see that in here. It would just make it a more enjoyable experience on Switch. That's not to say that controls are bad, they're well calibrated. I just always like to have those options. The UI isn't the cleanest either, sometimes obscuring things that you need to see, but what it does have is replayability. My goodness, is this one addictive, and I enjoyed my time immensely. Visually, I think it's quite impressive. It has that comic book aesthetic and it runs well enough on Switch, but the font size, my goodness, that font size. I think most developers think the Nintendo Switch is in the hands of 2020 vision users only. It is nice to see a physical version of this one available, and I think it holds its own within the genre while adding a few new elements. For many, the price might be the limiting factor, so I will say wait for a sale. I believe Wartales was briefly shown by Nintendo in the last Direct, or maybe the one before, and it definitely caught my eye. It has everything I enjoy in a game. In fact, it really reminded me of The Witcher Thronebreaker, which is also on Switch and you should definitely play. And now I've finally got around to playing it, and yeah, whoever it was that suggested it to me, you were right. This one is an open world RPG, but with some strategic turn-based gameplay and lots of different choices to make. Straight away, you get the choice of customizing your party as well as your adventure. There's a ton of accessibility that you can tweak so that the game feels exactly how you want it to. Not just difficulty, but survival settings, as well as the way that you save. You can have it exactly the way you want. Then you customize your party, changing their appearances, the names of them, and we had a pony who, surprisingly, we could also customize down to its personality traits. So meet Bob, the nimble, bloodthirsty, depressed pony. which is quite possibly the most awesome thing I've seen in a long time. Once you've customized them, you head out on your adventure, and the way you do that is also up to you. You can have it so that the world will scale with your party, or you can have it the way that I like it, where different regions have different strength enemies, and if you become massively overpowered, then you'll just squash anyone that's beneath you. I don't know about you, but I never like it when the enemies are just getting stronger when I am. It makes me feel like there's no real point in improving my strength. Now, your party consists of a few different classes like a soldier, a ranger, and a few other basic classes that can then be expanded upon. You'll gain points during combat or through experience from quests and be able to specialize them into a number of different areas. The overworld map lets you roam freely around, engaging or avoiding anyone you want. Sure, there are some enemies that might spring a trap on you, like bursting out of the woods and attacking, but you've the freedom to go where you want. There's quite a bit of choice here. I had a peasant run up to me and ask me to take them back to their village, which I dutifully obliged and got myself a nice little reward, only for them to direct me towards another quest where a farmer had gone off and joined a group of bandits, got himself arrested and was about to be hung. Here I had a few different choices of how to approach things. What I ended up doing was convincing the bandits to come and attack with me, and it turned into an absolute bloodbath. Now, combat is tactical turn-based. Your units are placed around the map as are your enemies, and I like the way they've handled controls. You can use left and right on the stick to switch between your skills, selecting them simple. There's a large area cone to show you where you can move, and it's all snappy. Even though performance does stutter a little at times, generally Wartales runs much better than I thought it would, but I think that unlocked frame rate might make a few people upset when it jumps up to 60 in one room and then down to 30 in the next. It's really not a deal breaker though, let's be honest. In this style of game, you don't need high frame rates particularly. It's just something to be aware of. When you attack an enemy in combat, it engages them. That engagement lasts and almost acts like a lock-on. It means they'll be facing you, and you can have another approach from behind and do a bit of backstabbing. You must be very aware of where you place your own units though. Team damage is very real here. And just as in real life, if your mate shoots you in the butt with an arrow, your relationship will drop immensely. What I love about games like this, particularly Wartales, is how much it reminds me of old school PC RPGs. There's a little bit of tutorial in here, but it gives you a lot of free reign to just experiment, head to the tavern, look on the quest board and pick up anything you want, and then the quests are marked sensibly. There's a compass so you know exactly where to go next, and then you'll find small clues to lead you to the next place. It's just hands-off enough that any serious RPG player is going to find a lot to love here. Now, I did mention performance briefly. I will say I have experienced one crash, which is very upsetting. You can save the game at any point, but even so, I did lose a little bit of progress there. Currently, I'm on version 1.02. I might have just been unlucky, but it is unfortunate because I think it's a brilliant game. Aside from your band of merry men, there are other roaming groups. Some of these will be friend and some foe, and it operates very much within the grey areas. You won't be penalised if you decide to raid a village. Well, obviously people will come after you and try and kill you, but it won't affect the amount of experience you get, and there's a general sense that you do have the freedom to make your own choices. It's also voice acted, which I think is quite impressive, and they've seemingly got most of the voice actors in Wales with this one. I used to live there, so it was quite nice, and there are some really standout performances among them.
Do not take pity on this scoundrel. He fled his home country to come and steal our crops. This Ediranian leech will be strung up for his crime.
So if you fancy the idea of creating your own ragtag band of mercenaries within a gritty medieval fantasy world and then doing whatever you damn well please while fighting in decent turn-based combat and a nice sprinkling of emergent storytelling, then this might be the game for you. However, be aware that there are quite a few little bugs in here. Maybe a little bit more polish would be nice, but sandbox RPG fans, yeah, you're going to have an absolute field day. The £35.99 asking price does put it at the premium end, but it's offering something not a lot of games on Switch, if any, do. You're looking at around about 40 to 70 hours at least. It does have local wireless play as well, so you can link switches up to 4 of them, and there's also online multiplayer, and being able to play it cooperatively, it adds a whole new dimension if you have the people to play with. And the way they've handled that, allowing you to share your loot and money as well as your resources, yeah, there's some epic potential for sure. For most people, they'll have pitched this price a little too premium. If you do buy it, you're not going to be disappointed, and hopefully I've given you enough to go on, but there are a few bugs and things that need ironing out. If you buy any of these, then do make sure you save yourself 10% using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. Nice one to the guy that emailed me tonight after using it and had a bit of an issue. That's all sorted for you now, mate. But yeah, don't be afraid to send us emails. We are literally just normal people. Well, I don't know how normal we are, but you know what I'm saying. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content, to our Patreons, our members, and as always for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya!